Welcome to Social Aloe Ministries, where we are committed to glorifying God while exposing the devil. Psalm 37:4 states, Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. And it sounds easy, doesn't it? You delight yourself in the Lord, and he just blesses you, rewards you with the desires of your heart. But many of you, you can attest that you have been delighting in the Lord for a very long time. But there's something else you desire in your heart besides him. But it has taken a very long time for you to get that thing. Many of you are still waiting. There are people who play the hypocrite and say, the only thing I delight is the Lord. If you think back in Genesis, when the Lord said it was not good for the man to be alone, because the Lord saw a desire in a man's heart. Or so we could speculate, that he saw a desire in a man's heart, that it wasn't good for him to be alone. So he's going to make a helpmeet for him. Don't play games with the Lord. It may sound very pious for you to say, the only thing you desire is the Lord. But if you desire something else, you may as well admit to it, because God knows. Don't try to fool yourself or others. And definitely, don't try to fool the Lord. So again, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Nothing is too hard for the Lord. But from a human perspective, we may think, this is so easy. The Lord could have done this a long time ago. It's like, what is taking so long? And in some cases, a simple act from the Lord, he delays it. And that causes a lot of turmoil. The dream may even die, so to speak. The desire in your heart may even die in a sense, or it gets so suppressed that you may even forget about it. And it's just one of those things. If you have done without something for a while, you just learn to cope without it. And you try not to think about it at all, because in a lot of cases, it is simply too painful. But a part of the Lord doing that is to test and to build your faith in him. And there are times when the delay, especially when you see other people getting blessed with the thing that you desire and they're getting it ahead of you, especially when their relationship with the Lord is not on the same level, or it may not on the same level as yours, or may even be non-existent. And you may wonder, why is the Lord blessing that person and not me? But of course, it rains on the just and on the unjust. And an example of two people who had to wait a very long time for something that was very simple for the Lord. Again, nothing is too difficult for the Lord. But it took 25 years for the Lord to fulfill his promise to Abraham and Sarah to bless them with a child. And let's kind of take a look at the story. Picking up in Genesis 18, starting at verse 9. Before I begin reading, this was at the point where the Lord had specified to Abraham that he was going to bless him with a son, and that Sarah would be the mother. Then the Lord and two angels visited Abraham in human form. And Abraham, he made a meal for them. And during the process, and they said unto him, Where is Sarah, thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and, lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. Some of you may be in this stage where you have been waiting for something so long, you know the Lord is going to do it, but you don't know when. And then you get that prophetic word, that message somehow from the Lord, letting you know that the time has come. So in this case, the Lord was letting them know that basically within a year, they were going to have a child. For some people, they may jump for joy. For others, it may be total shock. Some people may be so disenchanted, they may be like, Lord, it's like, don't even bother. Or please, don't mess with me like this. This is too much. I have been waiting too long for this. So responses vary. Now let's take a look at how Abraham and Sarah would react to this news. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. It ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. Wow. They were old. You could say they were past their prime. Probably having children was no longer a thought for Sarah, being so old. At this point in time, she was about 89 years old. And after waiting for 24 years at this point in time, now the Lord is going to say, within a year, you're going to have a child. I'm not sure how many people would look forward to having a child at 90 years old. It's seems kind of late to be running after a little toddler. But the Lord, he had a plan. Therefore, Sarah laughed within herself. She laughed within herself. And some of you may say, that sounds like unbelief. Well, what would you do if you're 89 years old and then you're told you're going to get pregnant? And especially after waiting all that time. People are going to respond in different ways. But with her laughing, it doesn't mean that she did not believe. But it continues. She laughed within herself, saying, after I am waxed old, shall I have pleasure? Shall she have pleasure? That desire had been there for a very long time. It had become a latent desire, a dormant desire. And now the Lord was awakening it. My Lord being old also. She was also pointing out Abraham being old, because Abraham was 10 years older than Sarah. And the Lord said unto Abraham, wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child, which am old? You notice the Lord said, asked why Sarah laughed. But when you look at verse 12, it says, Sarah laughed within herself. So even though Sarah laughed within herself, the Lord knew. And that goes to what I mentioned from Psalm 37:4 about it, something being in your heart, a desire in your heart. The Lord knows what it is. Even if you have chosen to forget what it is, the Lord knows that desire. You can't hide anything from the Lord. He knows your thoughts when they are far off. He knows your thoughts before you even have it. Is there anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed, I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. So here we see that in verse 10 of Genesis 18, the Lord said Sarah was going to have a son. And again in verse 14, he reiterated it. And that is very important. The Lord tends to confirm his word, unless it's something that's going to come to pass very soon that doesn't really require confirmation, where something coming to fruition ends up being the confirmation. So in a sense, with him saying it twice, when we look in Genesis 41, when Pharaoh had two dreams in one night, and they pointed to the same thing coming to pass. When Joseph was about to interpret the dream, he mentioned that the Lord gave Pharaoh two dreams that had the same meaning, because the matter had been firmly established by the Lord, and he was about to do it soon. He was going to bring it to pass soon. So here we have the Lord letting Sarah and Abraham know that they were going to have a son. That is confirmation. Also, that is, it had been firmly established, and the Lord was going to bring it to pass soon. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laugh not, for she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. Again, don't try to hide anything from the Lord. If you have a desire in your heart, especially a desire that he put there, he knows it's there. So don't try to hide. But that's not the only example of someone who waited a long time for the Lord to bring something to pass. But this case was a little bit different. There's some similarities, but different, because in 2 Kings 4, we see Elisha and his encounter with the Shunammite woman. I'll just read. I'll just start reading. In 2 Kings 4, starting verse 8. And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And it was so that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. And she said unto her husband, Behold now, I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Not really going too far, of course, but just want to point that out, where she perceived that he was a holy man of God. There are a lot of people out there who basically slap titles on themselves, and they're quick to use their titles to try to let people know, in a sense, who they are. But she perceived that he was a holy man of God. And in the Bible, when you see the term man of God, it usually refers to an angel in bodily form or a prophet. So she perceived that he was a holy man of God. When Jesus talked about false prophets in Matthew 7, 15, 16, he talked about, you shall know them by their fruits. Well, the same thing applies to true prophets. You will know them by their fruits. In a lot of cases, without them actually letting you know what their title is, the Holy Spirit of the Lord will reveal things to you based on their fruits. So she said, Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. And it fell on a day that he came thither, and turned in into the chamber, and lay there. And he said to Gehazi, his servant, Call the Shunammite. And when he called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, Say now unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldest thou be spoken for to the king, or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. And I'll pause here for a second. So she had been very kind to the man of God. And she didn't want anything in return. But even for finding out that she didn't want anything in return, Elisha just didn't take. He wanted to give something back to her. And a lot of people call themselves servant of the Most High God. But all they do is take, take, take. They'll take your tithes, your offerings. They'll take a lot of things, but they truly don't give her anything else in return. But here it is, Elisha, a recipient of the woman's kindness, and he wanted to do something to repay her. A simple, or in this case, a major token of appreciation. And it was also good because she wasn't kind to him, because their people, they chase prophets. They want to receive these ear-tickling messages. They want to be associated with a certain type of individual, and they'll chase a prophet more than they'll chase God. This woman was just doing things out of the kindness of her heart. Didn't want anything in return. Anything in return. And he said, When then is this to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily, she hath no child, and her husband is old. So she didn't say anything, but Gehazi identified a need that she had. I mentioned about in Genesis how the Lord said it is not good for the man to be alone because the Lord had identified a need. There are times where if you have a desire where you may not even be conscious of it, when the Lord sees a need in your life, and especially if you have been delighting in Him, then in due time, at the appointed time, He will grant that thing to you. Of course, if that is His will. And He said, "Call her." And when He had called her, she stood in the door. And He said, "About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son." So another prophecy about the birth of a son. And remember, she had no child and her husband was old. So again, it's like another situation of more than likely a dream that had seemingly died. And she said, "Nay, my Lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid." So again, someone else receiving a prophecy, and especially a prophecy that indicates a timeline regarding when the Lord is going to do something. And even though she called him a holy man of God and she believed he was a prophet, this right here, it was almost like crossing the line. It's like, prophesy anything to me except this. Because if this doesn't come to pass, it is going to be too much for me to handle. However, and the woman conceived and bare a son that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life. The Bible doesn't say. Some could say that because Elisha said it, then the Lord did it. But I like to stick with scriptures where it says that men of old spake as they were moved by the Holy Ghost. So I like to think that Elisha interceded for her, asked the Lord to grant her a child, and the Lord said yes, and gave him the specifics, and that is what he relayed to her. If you're a prophet, or if you have the gift of prophecy, please do not relay anything to anyone based on soulish desires. Because there are times you may see someone with a need, and you may be tempted to say something based on you having a desire to meet their need, as opposed to what the Spirit of the Lord is saying. Especially when it comes to something like this, where she was saying, please don't lie to me. It would be too much. Because if you miss the mark, even if you repent and ask that person for forgiveness, it is going to be hard for that person to bounce back from that. And also, if you miss the mark, then that brings discredit to the Lord. Even if you didn't say, thus saith the Lord. And there's also another important thing. Elisha did not say, thus saith the Lord, by this time next year. No. And let me read his exact words again. And he said, about this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. That is very important because many of you receive prophecies and you do not hear the Spirit of the Lord communicating to you through someone else because they didn't say, thus saith the Lord. Most prophecies are not going to have, thus saith the Lord. When the Spirit of the Lord speaks, you should be able to discern it. And not only that, when the Spirit of the Lord speaks, whatsoever He communicates, via dream, vision, a prophetic word from someone, that thing will come to pass. When you look in Jeremiah 32, it talks about how the Lord spoke to him. And then Jeremiah specified that when the thing came to pass, that he knew he had received a word from the Lord. The proof is in the pudding. You will always know that something's from the Lord when it actually comes to pass. I have to stay on target or else I'll go off tangent and start speaking about other things. In 2 Kings 4, something sad happened where the young man grew up He was still a child, but he ended up passing away. However, the Lord used Elisha to resurrect the child. Many of you, you have desires of your heart, and those things are dead. And it will take the Lord to resurrect those things and bring them to fruition. But there are times when you're waiting on the Lord, and what's you're waiting for on Him for, you'll witness it die, and it will be painful. And you may wonder, Lord, where were you? Why did you let us die? I have been waiting so long on you. And in some cases, because a desire of your heart dies, you may think that the Lord does not love you. That is not the case. And we see it in John 11. Now a certain man was sick, named Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary, and her sister Martha. It was that Mary that anointed the Lord with ointment and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. Therefore his sister sent unto him, saying, Lord, behold, he whom thou lovest is sick. So they knew that Jesus loved Lazarus. And when Jesus heard that, he said, This sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God might be glorified thereby. If the desires of your heart, if they have died, but you know that there were promises from the Lord is not going to fail to keep his word. But there are times when the Lord will let something die. It may not feel good, but it will be for his glory. Do not give up on the Lord. Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. Again, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So you make the assumption that because he loved them, then basically he would drop whatever he's doing and he would rush there to be there for Lazarus and his family. However, when he had heard, therefore, that he was sick, he abode 2 days in the same place where he was. So Jesus didn't drop everything to go to Lazarus. He stayed where he was for another 2 days. Then after that saith he to his disciples, Let us go into Judea again. His disciples say unto him, Master, the Jews of late sought to stone thee, and goest thou thither again? The Jews had sought to stone Jesus. And usually when they're stoning someone, it's going to be stoning to death. So there was an obstacle there that was between Jesus and Lazarus. However, Jesus was not going to let the obstacle stop him from going to Judea. Jesus is not going to let any obstacles stop him from fulfilling a promise to you. Jesus is not going to let any obstacles stop him from fulfilling a promise to you. Jesus answered, Are there not 12 hours in the day? If any man walk in the day, he stumbleth not, because he seeth the light of this world. But if a man walk in the night, he stumbleth, because there is no light in him. These things said he, and after that he said unto them, Our friend Lazarus sleepeth, but I go, that I may awake him out of sleep. Then said his disciples, Lord, if he sleep, he shall do well. Howbeit, Jesus spake of his death. Lazarus had died. So while Jesus tarried, Lazarus had died. But they thought that he had spoken of taking of rest in sleep. Then said Jesus unto them plainly, Lazarus is dead. The Lord knows if the desires of your heart are dead. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, to the intent ye may believe. Nevertheless, let us go unto him. So Jesus was glad that he was not there, so that they would believe. There are times when the Lord may allow a desire of your heart to die, so that when that thing comes to pass, you will know that the only way that it happened was because of the Lord. Then said Thomas, which is called Didymus, unto his fellow disciples, let us also go, that we may die with him. Then when Jesus came, he found that he had lain in the grave for 4 days already. So not only was Lazarus dead, he had been dead for 4 days. Now Bethany was nigh unto Jerusalem, about 15 furlongs off. 8 furlongs, 1 mile, so we're looking at about 2 miles. And many of the Jews came to Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. Now you remember when I mentioned about in Genesis 18 where the Lord finally showed up and told Abraham and Sarah that within a year they're going to have a child? Now how would you react if, in your opinion, the Lord shows up late? You have been waiting for something so long, and then now the Lord is showing up. In your opinion, he is late. Then Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and meet him, but Mary sat still in the house. Mary sat still in the house. And the Bible tells us about some differences between Mary and Martha, where you see one running out to Jesus and the other remaining in the house. There are times when we get angry with the Lord because he did not do what we wanted him to do when we wanted him to do it. Be careful about allowing the desires of your heart to become like idols. Ensure that the Lord is first and foremost. Do not let anything that you have, anything that you desire, come between you and the Lord. Mary and Martha should have both been running out to Jesus. Now, what they may have to say to him may have differed again, but do not let anything cause you to basically stay in your house when the Lord shows up. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. A lot of times when I hear people saying that God's timing is perfect, yes, it is. But there's also, in my opinion, a bit of hypocrisy that goes with that. Martha didn't say, oh Lord, you're right on time. She said, no, if you had been here, Lazarus would not have died. She was honest with the Lord. But I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it thee. Martha's faith in God, Martha's faith in Jesus was unshakable. Unshakable. Jesus saith unto her, Thy brother shall rise again. Martha saith unto him, I know that he shall rise again in the resurrection at the last day. Now it's getting real good. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection, the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? Do you believe that Jesus is a resurrection? Do you believe that he can and will resurrect a promise to bring it to life, to fulfill his promise to you? She saith unto him, Yea, Lord, I believe that thou art the Christ, the Son of God, which should come into the world. That is a powerful statement because there were many Jews back then who did not recognize that Jesus was the Son of God. There are many Jews throughout the generations that have not recognized that Jesus was and is the Son of God. But a time will come when every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord. And when she had so said, she went her way and called Mary her sister secretly, saying, The Master is come and calleth for thee. And as soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came unto him. So at least Mary got up. Now, Jesus was not yet come into town, but was in that place where Martha met him. The Jews then which were with her in the house and comforted her, when they saw Mary, that she rose up, hastily went out, followed her, saying, She goeth unto the grave to weep there. So Mary had people who were comforting her. There are times when you have people who are comforting you, but regardless of what they do, they won't be able to do what only the Lord can do. Sometimes the loneliest feeling is being around a group of people who truly cannot relate to what you're going through. And not only that, they cannot do anything for you. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was, and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died. Neither of them were hypocritical. Neither of them were like, Oh Lord, you are right on time. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping, which came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. Do not think that the Lord gets pleasure in seeing you suffer. Do not for a second believe that the Lord is taking pleasure in seeing you suffer. And said, Where have ye laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Jesus wept. Again, the Lord loved Lazarus, Mary, and Martha. And all of that, Jesus loves you. Then said the Jews, Behold, how he loved him. And some of them said, Could not this man, which opened the eyes of the blind, have caused that even this man, should not have died? There are times when you're going through your test of faith, when the devil will come at you, and I'll give you an example because I heard this myself, where a devil said, if the Lord truly loved you, he would not allow you to suffer this much. When you hear those kind of voices, rebuke them. When you hear those kind of voices, rebuke them. Jesus therefore again, groaning in himself, cometh to the grave. It was a cave, and a stone lay upon it. Jesus said, Take ye away the stone. Remove the obstacles. Martha, the sister of him that was dead, saith unto him, Lord, by this time he stinketh, for he hath been dead 4 days. Martha, pointing out the obvious. There are times when you will receive a prophetic message, letting you know that the Lord is about to do something. There's a good time to start exercising your faith, to thank the Lord for that which was dead, that he's about to resurrect. And if we're all going to be raised up on the last day, even if 4 days wasn't long enough. But I'll caution you. For example, if you were in a relationship, and that is a relationship the Lord did not ordain, and that relationship has come to a pass, do not wait around waiting for the Lord to resurrect that relationship. There are some things that die that the Lord wants to remain dead. If you're holding on to something from your past that has no place in your future, you have to learn to recognize the difference when it's time to move on, because the Lord is not going to resurrect it. Excuse me. Jesus saith unto her, Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? So her weight, her pain, Lazarus' death was for the glory of God. Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead was laid. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank thee that thou hast heard me, and I knew that thou hearest me always. But because of the people which stand by, I said it, that they may believe that thou hast sent me. And when he thus had spoken, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he that was dead came forth, bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was bound with a napkin. Jesus saith unto them, Loose him, and let him go. Mary and Martha, the desire of their heart was for Jesus to heal Lazarus. But the Lord allowed Lazarus to die. He remained dead for 4 days, but then the Lord resurrected him. He is a resurrection. He is alive. No one comes to the Father except through Christ. The desire of their heart died, but the Lord resurrected it. It was all for God's glory. I'd like to say that I pray that the ending to your story will be for God's glory. It may be painful now, but it is for God's glory. If you're still waiting, and especially if there's no end in sight, I pray that the Lord will strengthen your faith and allow you to continue to endure until your season comes. And if your season has come, please do not be like the 9 lepers who Jesus healed and just walked away. Be like the 10th one, the Samaritan, who returned to thank the Lord. So if you've received that desire for your heart, do not forget to thank the Lord. Do not forget to glorify the Lord. And please, strengthen your brothers and sisters in the faith. Don't gloat about how the Lord has blessed you, but help to strengthen them, to let them know that at the end of your trial, that it will be worth it. And on a final note, I mentioned the age of Sarah when she had Isaac. Yes, the Lord let her wait 25 years before she had the child, when she was about 90. Sarah is the only woman in the Bible whose age at the time of her death is identified. She was 127 years old, which meant even though the Lord had delayed her blessing, the Lord gave her 37 years to enjoy that blessing. The Lord will make it worth the wait. So in accordance with Psalm 37:4, delight yourself in the Lord, and in due season, He will grant the desires of your heart. And I close with one final reminder from the Lord. In Matthew 6:36, The Lord said, "But seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you." God bless you.